I'd like to share some quick thoughts on Inyane Diyama. You know, when we lose a close family member, Yiddishkeit has a cathartic process that leads us from the most intense periods of mourning surrounding the Levaya and Kavura to the Shiva, the slightly less intense Shloshim, and eventually to the end of Avelus at the first Yortzeit. Tomorrow, we will sit on the floor, and together with all of our brothers and sisters around the world, Klal Yisrael will mourn the destruction of the two Batei Mikdash. The first was destroyed around 2,500 years ago, and the second around 2,000 years ago, roughly. That is a very long time ago. So the halachas and minhagim that we observe during these days lead us in a reversed Avelus process. Periods of increasing intensity. The 3 weeks, Chodesh Av, the 9 days, Shvur Shechalbai, and culminates with TishaBav itself. This reverse process helps us to connect to a loss that we have not personally experienced. It helps us to recognize and be mindful of the fact that the loss of the Batei Mikdash still affects us deeply, not just on Tisha B'Av or during the 9 days or 3 weeks, but each and every day of our lives. Connecting to historic loss, whether in the history of our own lives or in our heritage, is a tricky thing. How much to hold on to? Should we allow ourselves to be defined by these losses? Should we allow ourselves to be limited by our personal losses? Limited by the losses of our bubbies and zaydis throughout the long and difficult Galus? These questions are particularly resonant in today's world as we watch society at large struggle with some of these same issues. And as with all complicated questions, there are no easy answers. But I believe that Tisha B'Av teaches us something very important about these questions. Number one, there's no such thing as just get over it or just move on. Losses hurt. You cannot ignore them and pretend that they will just go away. They will not, and that is okay. Number two, you can't carry historical losses around with you all the time. They will prevent you from moving on. And therefore, number three, historical losses require a context. And that context ought to be a process of connecting to the loss and then disconnecting so that we do not get trapped by them. We fast on Tisha B'Av, we sit on the floor, we don't listen to music during the 3 weeks, the 9 days, we don't take showers during the 9 days. But on Chatzos, the day after Tisha B'Av, we do all of these things. We move on. The process of the 3 weeks and Tisha B'Av teaches us that traumatic events, losses matter, that they affect us, that we need to properly recognize and mourn devastation and loss, and that there's no time limit for that mourning. It is ongoing. However, we need to work on developing processes for connecting to our losses that do not limit us, that allow us to move on. We connect to and mourn the destruction of the Batei Mikdash, and at the same time daven several times a day that the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt. But there's even more. We know that the Beis HaMikdash is not just a building of stone. The Torah teaches us, "V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham." It's also talking about how we have to build ourselves into Batei Mikdash, allowing the Shekhinah to dwell inside each and every one of us. And that's something that does not require Mashiach. It's available to us today. Our losses and traumas are real. They have an impact on us, on who we are, and on how we are. We have to recognize them and connect with them, but in a way that does not limit us to being defined as victims of our losses. We need to connect to our losses and our traumas in a way that allows us to be empowered survivors who are consciously building ourselves and building our futures. And of course, all of this we need to do even as we wait the ultimate building of the third Beis HaMikdash, Be'ezras Hashem, B'mehera v'yameinu.